be in this part of the world, and I'd like to congratulate Vic for a wonderful contribution about the history of the Poplar councillors. And comrades will recall that the Liverpool 47, in fact, I then blazoned on the party banner, "It's better to break the law than break the poor." And you'll pardon me if I look somewhat traumatised. Not only was I held up in Stafford for an hour today because the guard dislocated his shoulder and he didn't have a replacement, I've been at Labour Party observing some of the Labour Party conference this week, and I spent a traumatic 2 hours of torture in a Labour Representation Committee meeting on Tuesday. And it's really, it's like coming down to reality from La La Land. At the Labour Party conference in Liverpool takes place against the background of a splendid waterfront, which has enjoyed literally billions of pounds of European money. Oh, by the way, the 47 is not generally known, was responsible in the 80s for triggering off that deluge of cash, but of course no credit is given to the 47. That's another story. What I would argue, comrades, listening to the Labour leadership this week, not only was it traumatising, it was painful, and when you watch professional liars operating, it's really something to behold. Now we had balls. I woke up on Tuesday, I woke up on Monday, it was my non-working day, and balls was on the television, and his declaration of leadership was to the British working class was vote for us and everything will stay the same. He was on the Labour Party conference along with Mr. Ed, and it's as though these people are programmed.
Yeah.
As soon as they get underway, somebody flicks a switch and they go, "We've got to condemn the 47, we've got to condemn the 47. It's quite incredible that Miliband made his contribution about the magnificent port of Liverpool. No reference to the fact that Liverpool has the highest number of households without a wage earner in the UK.
Yeah.
The longest housing waiting list compared to any other city in the UK. But he found time to congratulate Joe Anderson, the Labour leader, who was in the process of implementing £192 million worth of cuts, but condemning the 47 in the next breath. There was a bloke called, his name escapes me, he is the Sparks, I think his name is. He's chairman of the AMA Labour Group, that's the National Association of Metropolitan Authorities. And his main contribution was, we all realise we've got to make these cuts. But unlike the 80s, we don't want to descend into insanity. What we've got to do is all hang together and keep our discipline while we implement the cuts. So unity is everything. Now, Nye Bevan once said, in relation to the NEC, what you people are talking about is the unity of the graveyard. The graveyard is the most stable form of organisation on the planet, and that's what these people propose. And of course, we know a brief look at history will demonstrate very clearly how the programme of the 47 was, and the strategy and tactics employed by the 47, if it was employed by a single major local authority in Britain today, could probably transform the situation. Now, we were faced with precisely the same situation that these people are faced with at the present time. We were the most deprived city in the UK. They refer to, the right wing refer to, we don't want to go back to the dark days, meaning the days between 83 and 87. What we argue, we inherited the dark days. Between the mid-70s and 1983, 65% of the manufacturing base of the Liverpool economy had collapsed. Standards had gone, engineering had gone, shipbuilding was finished, ship repair was a thing of the past. The printing industry was basically wiped out of existence, the oil industry. We saw that the closure of the South Docks with the loss of 8,000 jobs. In other words, Liverpool was decimated. And on top of this, Thatcher implemented a programme of cuts in that period comparable to what has taken place at the present time. Between 79, when Thatcher was elected, and 83, when the Socialist Council was elected, £30 million was lost. And today's figures, obviously, an awful lot more. And at the same time, jobs were lost. The Liberal Tory alliance shed 5,000 jobs in the local authority, and on one occasion actually froze rates. Now that was an electoral gimmick, because with local authority finance, if you freeze rates, then the next time the housing support grants come around, what the government says, pat you on the head, but you were a good boy last year, you froze rates, you can cut them a bit more this year, because what we've learned is that you can manage. So this notion of cutting rates or even freezing rates or a minimum increase, which the Liberals introduced it to pander to their small business base, blew up in their faces. So Liverpool lost actually millions of pounds, and we inherited £10 million of unallocated cuts in that first budget that we were faced with. And we said to the working class, there's no choice. We're not prepared to be elected and implement these cuts. We have an alternative programme. We have a house building programme, a job creation programme, a schools programme, a social services programme, linked to a massive campaign to force the Tories to retreat. And at that stage, we were part of something like 30 major local authorities involving people like Blunkett, like Livingston, who's the other fella? The other people, Margaret Hodge and the... Ted Knight. Well, Ted stuck the course, to be fair. And another name escapes me. Never mind. You get the picture. You get the general drift. And one by one, these people peeled away when it came to the crunch. And they said quite clearly to us when we challenged them. I remember speaking to Jack Straw. Jack Straw was the other one. He said, well, it was either make a stand or preserve my parliamentary career. We have no doubt what his choice was. Livingston said the same thing. And Blunkett, of course, also said the same thing. And therefore, they peeled away until we were left. They're completely isolated. But during that period we were in office, unlike other local authorities who make promises, other politicians who make promises, get elected and then break them, we got elected and implemented our promises. And the ruling class said we can't be having this. They're not playing the game. That's not the way it's done in British politics. You make promises and you break them. These people are serious, because in the first period they used to pat us on the head and said, well, they won't last the course, they're making noises now. Of course, when we were going the full course, refused to implement cuts, refused to increase rates to compensate for Tory cuts. They decided these people have got to be put into place. But in the short period we were in office, we took the language of socialism. I don't think I've heard that word this week. The language of socialism, and translated it into the language of houses, the language of jobs, the language of social services, the language of youth employment. We took on more apprentices in our period of office than had been taken on in the previous 20 years. And as a result of our construction programme of houses, of 6 sports centres, of building a new park, of refurbishing the most deplorable houses in Western Europe, and building 5,000 houses, as I said. On one occasion, UCAT, the construction union, ran out of joiners. They couldn't supply any more joiners because of the housing programme, because of the construction programme of the Liverpool City Council. And in the short term, those Jeremiads who argue that we chased away business, because if you're in a sea of capitalism and you're trying to construct a small island of socialism, clearly you have to work with the tools at your disposal. But the construction companies actually sent messages, because they were doing okay, of congratulations to the City Council because of the magnificent construction programme that they were carrying out. So from every point of view, we were acting as a beacon to the Liverpool working class, and in fact nationally. And the working class demonstrated their support by the magnificent demonstrations that were seen on the streets of Liverpool. Many comrades in this room were on those demonstrations, culminating in that mass demonstration of 50,000 in Castle Street in November of '84. Biggest demonstration seen in Liverpool since 1911. I'm talking about 1911. When you say that Liverpool has been airbrushed from history, the only time that period is raised by the official wing of this movement is to pour score on it, to demonise it, to tell lies. We've got a campaign going on in Liverpool at the moment called, and it's sponsored by the City Council, Liverpool, City of Radicals. Robert Tressel's up there. The 1911 dispute, fair enough, very good. Several other people, Arthur Dooley, John Lennon, okay, as far as they go. Not a mention of the 47. So much so that the Liverpool University Press, there's a bloke in charge named Con-Dem. Don't know what his politics are, but he's a bit of an academic, and he's commissioned a book on Liverpool in the 80s, the role of the Liverpool 47. And what he wants to do, he said to this researcher who came to see me, he said, this bloke is amazed. He's seen Liverpool, the city of radicals, and there's no mention of what took place in the 80s. And there was mass demonstrations when 47 democratically elected councillors were removed from office by the district auditor. Why isn't this referred to? Why isn't this emblazoned on these radical banners? And he's commissioned this book, whether it comes off or not, of course, remains to be seen. But at the moment, it looks like a goer. But not only was the demonstrations in the ballot box, we got the highest Labour vote ever recorded in the history of the city. We got the highest Labour vote in mass terms since 1945, when the city's population was 700,000, and in the 80s it was 460,000. We actually got more votes than was cast in the period, in the post-war period. A clear indication that if you implement policies which correspond to the aspirations of the working class, then the working class will turn out and support you. Unlike the current Labour leadership, who are not even prepared to make promises in opposition. And if they're not making promises when they're in opposition, imagine what they're going to be like if and when they get elected. But unfortunately, there is no pole of attraction at this stage as far as the working class is concerned. But that campaign, we learned many things. That campaign demonstrated to us in the clearest possible fashion that if you carry out your promises and appeal to the mass of the working class, then there'll be a response. If you appeal to the mass of the trade union movement, there'll be a response. Because we controlled the District Labour Party. We had a majority of support of militant supporters and allies inside the DLP. This was the most democratic body, probably within the British Labour movement. It was made up, the composition was trade unions, party branches, constituency parties, the youth organisations, the women's organisations, the co-ops, all coming together in this vibrant organisational body, which was equipped with a fighting programme. We were getting meetings of 200, 300. On one occasion, we got 600 people at a meeting of the District Labour Party. And in those days, it was the party that determined the policy, and it was the job of the councillors to carry it out. We had yearly policy conferences where, frankly, the policy of Millet was adopted because it was the most clear policy and reflected the interests of the working class. That was carried year after year and implemented year after year while we were in office. The right wing, under the leadership of Kinnock, and a bloke named like Kit Kilfoyle, who masqueraded as a left-winger in the last couple of years of office, proceeded to smash the DLP. Suspended the DLP in 1985, comrades will recall, some comrades in this room, and the people who moved to suspension was people like Tom Sawyer, Kinnock, who all, as we know, have all ended up in the House of Lords. And we saw Baron Kinnock on Sunday crossing our picket line outside the demo, outside the conference, and I said, Neil, where's your airmine? I'm really disappointed. And one of the comrades shouted, come on Neil, buy a copy of the Socialist, and he said, oh, I'm finished with all that, and ran and scampered into the conference. And it was these people who carried out the destruction of the Labour Party that we see today. They ripped up the rule book. And I was commissioned by the Socialist Party to again another tortuous job of reading The Third Man, a book by a biography by Mandelson.
Oh.
And if you read that book, and read it, it's on the website, my review, it's the clearest example of how the bourgeois, the capitalist class, sent agents in to reform the Labour Party. They accused us of entrism. And I've got to say, we did it very well. We did it very skillful in Liverpool. Peter will no doubt discuss this. We worked in concert with the National Centre all the time, and we carried out a very, very skillful operation of entrism. But it wasn't on the basis of behind-the-scenes deals. This was on the basis of honestly presenting our programme in front of the working class and asking them to support it. And supported they did. The difference between us and these scoundrels, Mandelson boasts in his book that three people, he dubbed themselves the Three Musketeers, himself, Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, plotted, they set up this Stalinist type organisation, plotted to strip the Labour Party of every single democratic element within its constitution, to strip out Clause 4, and to transform Labour into a party of business. That's contained in Mandelson's book. And we would argue this. Finally, as I said, I kicked off and mentioned that I went to the meeting of the Labour Representation Committee on Tuesday. 2 hours of torture. It was quite a big platform. There was Len McCluskey, Tony Benn, Jeremy Corbyn, Mark Sawatka, but there was people coming in and going out, and there was a bit of a merry-go-round in terms of the platform. Ben spoke and said, what we need is demands. Never made a single demand. Left the meeting, made no reference at all to the 47. The one who raised it, funnily enough, and maybe we should congratulate him when we see him, was Jeremy Corbyn, who said, Tony's just come in, I welcome the 47, they've done a tremendous job in the 80s, and they've got my admiration. He's the only one who said it. The other speakers made fairly good speakers, but nobody touched on the 47. And in the official tops of the movement, the 47 is still taboo territory. Don't mention that. The example of these people will embarrass us. I walked out of the meeting, three young blokes came up to me and said, could I have my photograph taken with you? I said, why? He said, well, we thought you'd done a great job in the 80s. So I said, well, what are you doing at this meeting? He said, well, we're in the Labour Party. So what are you in the Labour Party for? It's an absolute waste of time. He said, well, we're biding our time. There's no doubt that they will leave the Labour Representation Committee and join the ranks of our own organisation in the fullness of time. So I would say this, comrade, in finishing. As I say, it's great to speak in this area, and it's great to reflect upon the brave men and women of the Poplar Council. They had it worse than us. They went to jail for 6 weeks, and probably when they came out they lived in penury and were persecuted for the rest of their lives. Now some of us had rough times, but none of us went to prison. And we were saved by the fantastic financial response from the trade union movement to pay our costs in the appeals court. £600,000 was raised from ordinary rank and filers, from Land's End to John O'Groats, who recognised the value of our contribution to the struggle. And I'll finish on this note. If one single major council stood up today and did what the 47 did, you wouldn't have a housing problem in Britain today. You wouldn't have a jobless problem in Britain today. And if Anderson stood up and had told him time and again, and made a stand, and not weeping crocodile tears, he says, he cries every night, because he's got to make these cuts. If in fact he stood up and appealed to the movement to support a massive campaign and say no to the Tories, he would get the response of the working class in Liverpool, and that would act as a beacon to the rest of the trade union and labour movement to do the same.